Its number is 666.
Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. Let's talk the Omen. So the Omen tells the story of a political figure who starts to realize that his son may be the Antichrist. What is up, people, and welcome to the Omen review series. Just like with The Exorcist that I wrapped up last week, the Omen is another franchise that we're going to be covering this Halloween on 31 on 31, and it's a franchise that I have been waiting to talk about for a while, so I figured if any other franchise gets the review series treatment in October, it better be the Omen. So we're going to talk about this one, we're going to talk about the three sequels. I always forget about that fourth one, dreading that one, and the basically shot-for-shot remake, line-for-line remake. So 5 movies in this franchise. We're going to go through all of them and then end in a ranking. And then 31 on 31, for those of you that do not know, is where we take a bunch of horror franchises and we rank them together on Halloween. So please hit that subscribe button if you're interested in checking that out so you don't miss it. Now, as far as the original Omen, now, I'm somebody that, as you guys have probably been able to tell, for those of you that have been with me for a while, my horror love definitely belongs to the 80s. I love 80s horror flicks, the 80s vampire movies, the 80s slashers. Now, there are some 70s and certainly earlier than that horror films that I do really like and do really appreciate, but more times than not, films earlier than the 80s tend to be classics that I respect more than I actually enjoy. Meaning I understand why they had the impact that they had, I understand why they are classics, but for whatever reason, they just don't really go on my wavelength. Well, The Omen is not one of those movies. I love this fucking movie. But before I tell you guys about this awesome 70s horror classic, let's talk about the sponsor of this video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community that is filled to the brim with not only subjects that you can dive into, expand your horizons, and sharpen your skills, but also people like you and me that are interested in doing more skills, learning more things, and broadening their horizons as well. This is not just a collection of how-to videos, this is not just a collection of tutorial videos, these are actual mini communities that all focus in on different hobbies, trades, or skills. Within the Skillshare community, you can find classes that will cover any subject that you can possibly think of, with the added bonus of a passionate group of people that have the same interests and the same drive as you, that will aid and keep you motivated and keep you interested in the skill that you are trying to learn. For my own personal growth, I have been checking into a lot of classes over the past few months regarding low-budget filmmaking, regarding photography, video editing, all the things that I do on a daily basis on this channel that I've never learned all that you can learn about, and one day might actually gain enough skills, enough confidence, and enough tools to be able to do something beyond this YouTube channel. So if you're interested in sharpening your skills and learning new things in a time where, let's be honest, we have more time to do that than we ever have before, please check the video description below for my exclusive link, and the first 1,000 people to click this link is going to get a free trial of Skillshare, so there's no reason whatsoever to wait. Check it out now. Thank you to Skillshare, as always, for being an awesome sponsor and for sponsoring this video, and now let's talk about the 70s classic, The Omen. So starting off with the positives of The Omen, I love the building tension, that looming threat, that slowly building atmosphere that we get in this movie. This is not one of those horror films that's trying to like shock you visually and trying to let you know that this is going to be a very bombastic type of movie. It's very understated, but throughout the movie, the slow reveals of what is going on, the slow reveals of what Damien might be, as well as what all the surrounding characters and surrounding figures that are starting to appear around him, what their nefarious plans are, really does have this looming threat over the movie that just feels like this dark cloud that gets thicker throughout the runtime of the movie. Not too many classic movies have that approach, to where it has a very understated look to it, a very understated approach to the filmmaking, but has such horrific imagery and horrific storyline that's just slowly building out, and they don't feel like they're combating tones. I mean, as soon as the movie starts off, it starts off with, you know, a stillborn baby and a man having to make this gut-wrenching decision for the better of his wife, which definitely comes down to a moral question. So right at the beginning of the movie, you're just talking to the person next to you like, would you do that? What's going on? And then as soon as you start to get into their life, everything seems fine. He's getting this awesome promotion. The kid is cute as hell, and they're growing up. They're the big, wonderful, happy family. And you get to his 5th birthday, and that nanny just, "It's all for you, Damien," and jumps off and hangs herself.
Look at me, Damien. It's all for you.
From that moment, the movie is just like this looming cloud of what the hell is going on? Why are all these weird events surrounding this family and this kid? Is he an innocent kid? Is he the Antichrist? I don't really know, and that really enforces the whole moral dilemma of Gregory Peck's character, to where this is a child that he has known and loved and raised and fed and bathed for 5 years, and now on a dime he's supposed to believe that, no, this is the devil incarnate and I have to extinguish this thing. That is gut-wrenching, and that's something that I don't think any man on this earth would have a very easy decision with, even if you were the most faithful person on earth as far as religion goes. So just the whole moral question that's looming underneath all of these nefarious events really does gut-wrench you as a human being as you watch it. And along with that growing threat, with that looming presence of evil that is throughout this movie, the pacing never lets up. It's not a movie that's like breakneck to the finish. It's not a movie that stands around and meanders too much. As soon as that nanny hangs herself and you realize that there are some very, very bad events that is about to be going through this family's life, this movie never lets up. It just gets bigger and bigger and more tense and crazier all the way through to the ending. And as soon as you get to that climax moment of the film, it ends literally like 90 seconds later. Like, this movie does not fuck around. This is not here to waste your time. It's not here to overstay its welcome. It's here to terrify you. It is here to disturb you and then get the hell out. And one of the more unique approaches that they take in The Omen is that, Damien is your titular villain. This is, if a horror icon is going to be birthed out of this movie, it's Damien. There's a reason why nobody likes to name their kid Damien after this movie came out, and it's because of that kid. But he's not really the horror in this movie. He's not really the terrifying figure. It's not like he's walking around with a knife like Gage from Pet Sematary and that's why we fear him. You fear Damien and what the potential of this character is because of everything that surrounds him, because of the Hellhound, because of Mrs. Baylock, because of all of the weird Omen events, like the Final Destination style deaths that surround anybody that tries to get into his way. And that's a really cool, unique aesthetic of this movie that not a whole lot of other horror classics go for. Usually you have your villain, that is your villain. Well, we have our villain here, but he's just kind of in the background chilling the whole movie. And there's something about that that almost makes him more terrifying. Because obviously, if you wanted to kick the shit out of this kid, you could. It's just by a miracle of events that Gregory Peck's character is not successful with what he's trying to do by the end of it. But everything that surrounds this kid makes it like you can't touch him even if you wanted to. Like, this is a very, very fragile, small child, but you can't do anything about it because the surrounding evil will not let you. And a lot of that is brought home by the deaths in this movie. Now, for a movie in the 70s, this was actually a little bit ahead of its time as far as some of not only the gore, although it's not like a full-on bloodbath type movie, more so just like some decapitations and some stabbings, but with the gore that they decide to show you, but also with what they decide not to show you, that is almost more terrifying. You get really cool on-screen deaths like the impalement of the priest, the biggest one, the decapitation of the photographer, the press guy, where that pane of glass comes and it's just an awesome practical effect. Once again, proving that practical effects in horror are the only effects that you should use when you have the ability to, which you always have the ability to do, modern day Hollywood. But the deaths that they don't show you, that they just tell you the aftermath of, or they give you a visual suggestion. Even just the bones of Gregory Peck's baby when he finds it in that crypt with the little hole in its skull. They don't elaborate on it. They don't say anything beyond the fact of they murdered my child. and all you picture is somebody like impaling a baby or doing something, and you're just like, oh my God. And once again, not many movies can walk that line to where you satisfy those of us gore hounds and those of us carnage candy hounds with on-screen deaths that are awesome, that are creepy and effective, but also give suggestion of horror and not make everybody feel like they're not getting their satisfaction on that, or they're not getting enough, or everything is just suggested and it becomes too much ambiguity. They got that perfect mix. And finally, the score of this movie is absolutely iconic. I mean, this is something that anytime somebody talks about evil, I mean, it's almost like a meme at this point, or a joke where they're like, that all came from this movie. And every single scene that they ramp up the score, I mean, from the scene where they're driving up to the church and Damien's like, oh, hell no, I ain't going in there. Or even to the fight between Gregory Peck's character and Mrs. Baylock, the evil nanny. It just, the score ramps up all of the emotions that they're trying to give through the scene. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they actually won an Oscar for the score of this movie. It might be the only Oscar that they won, which is a little bit of a shame, but nonetheless, absolutely deserving of that. The score is the shit. As far as mixed aspects, for me, it's just the acting. Now, the acting is great for the time. Like, Gregory Peck is known as one of the greatest actors ever. I even think that everybody surrounding him does a really good job, especially Mrs. Baylock, and being really creepy. I mean, just from her opening line, where she's like, "Fear not, child, I am here to protect thee." Just that weird dialect just makes you go, oh, this bitch is crazy. But Gregory Peck and his wife, Lee Wemmick, I believe was her name, their performances are really good for the time. But the type of performances that they deliver don't necessarily age all that well. It's a very old school cinema style of acting.
You're insane.
He must die, Mr. Thorne!
You asked for 5 minutes. And you've got 5 minutes.
And I think they're effective, and I think that if you kind of just put yourself in the mindset of the 70s, it never really takes you out of the movie, but there's certain lines of dialogue that just have a very old school cadence to them that I think when you watch it as a modern day audience member, it makes the movie feel more dated than it actually is. I mean, there was other movies that came out in the 70s that didn't have that old school cinema approach to the dialogue and to the acting. And I think that was just a creative choice that they had here, or that was just a creative choice of Gregory Peck because he was an old school actor. So there's something about it that that's the one aspect of this movie that makes it feel a little bit dated, is just the style of acting. And going along with the acting, there's also some visuals in this movie that I think are very old school too, that date this film. There's like some lingering shots, or some camera choices as far as what to zoom in on and what to linger on. Like, for example, the one that always sticks out in my head is whenever Gregory Peck's wife is about to be killed by Mrs. Blaylock, and she's got like that little screen over her face, and she looks and she just pauses, and it just quick zooms on her eyes, and then Mrs. Blaylock is like, and then it shoots back and she's still standing there like, and it's like, oh, that wouldn't happen. That's old school shit. Like, you would at least scream or react to it somehow. If somebody's gonna kill you, you just don't turn around and go, and then wait for that bitch to push you out of the window onto an ambulance. And again, those, I mean, you could almost categorize those as nitpicks, and that's the only negative things that I have to say about this movie, because I absolutely love it. But those are the only aspects of this that I think don't quite hold up as well. I think the kills and the horror and the tone and the atmosphere, all of that holds up and puts a lot of modern horror to shame. But the acting and some of that old school filmmaking that Richard Donner chose to have in this, just, it works, but it stands out. So overall, guys, I love The Omen. I think this is a great horror classic. This is one of my favorite movies of the 70s. I don't necessarily think that it merited a franchise, and from what I hear about the sequels, which will be first-time watches for me, they didn't exactly deliver on making us not believe that the first movie was just a good one and done, but as a singular horror classic, The Omen still holds up for the most part for me. I think that it's one of the better movies that just has that nice balance of showing you horror while suggesting horror and just having that looming threat that builds throughout the movie. So this is an absolute must watch if you're a horror fan. So if you like religious horror, if you love classic horror, if you love 70s horror, what the hell are you doing? You should have seen The Omen before now. But nonetheless, better late than never. So check this thing out as soon as possible and add it to your collection. Go out and buy it. So what do you guys think of The Omen? Are you a fan of this one? Is it a little bit too old school or too slow paced for your taste? Do you actually prefer the 2006 remake? I'm about to review that one right after I get done recording this one, because I watched those almost back to back for comparison's sake. Let me know your thoughts down below on The Omen and the Omen franchise. Which sequel are you looking forward to me watching and reviewing the most? Thank you guys for watching. Please like and share this video to help it get a little bit more eyes on it, to get a little bit more views, to help this channel out. Speaking of helping this channel out, if you enjoy what I do and you want to support this channel directly and get some exclusive perks and content for that, please check out my Patreon page. The link is down below in the video description of all of my videos. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the further Omen reviews, as well as the ranking and the 31 on 31 this Halloween. And as always, guys, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean that you have to be.